Hello, welcome back to Called to Homeschool, episode number 301. How has homeschool changed since I started 17 years ago? Hello, and welcome back for another awesome episode. It is me, Meg, your host and homeschool guru. I hope you loved last week's episode with Ariane. I thought that was so fun. If anything, I loved just interviewing her and finding out all these awesome things. She's just amazing. It totally inspired me and helped me come up with some fun ideas for my own trip I'm taking with my daughter next month. And I just am excited to start having other homeschool moms on the podcast to share what their homeschool looks like. And I like the idea that none of them will have a business with it. That it is just because sometimes it's like, well, you have a business with it, of course, like you figured it out, or whatever your thought or story is with that. So the idea of having these awesome moms on that are just your regular moms, how they're making it work, what it looks like, different dynamics, like she was all girls, I'm a boy heavy family, somebody maybe with just boys, right? Of just these different ideas of people following what their works for them and how they're creating it, and just to glean from them and just be inspired by them. So look forward for more awesome episodes from other homeschool mamas. It's going to be a lot of fun. Well, today's episode comes from a request on Instagram, and I thought it was a really fun one. And they asked me, how has homeschool changed since I started? And what a fun question. So I'm going to cover it in today's episode. So if you remember, I started homeschooling back in 2008. I had the feeling to homeschool my kids, decided to do it, then freaked out, put my kids in school, and a month later of complete chaos, took my babies out, and we've been homeschooling ever since. So when I started homeschooling, just as a reminder, I had 5 kids. My oldest was 6, down to a newborn, right? So we had a first grader, kindergartner, preschooler, toddler, newborn. So it was chaotic, but it was actually more chaotic driving them to and from school. So, and then not getting any time with my oldest because now he was burned out and already done. And I thought that can't be our relationship. So, anyways, how do things look different from back then to somebody starting homeschool now? So, one of the things that looks different are how many people are homeschooling. Homeschooling is actually almost, it is, let me do the math. Yes, more than doubled from the stat was from 2007. But back then, there were about 1.5 million homeschoolers, which is about 3% of all the students in the country. Now it's at 3.7 million, so it's more than doubled, or 6.7% of all students in the country. So, although some people still consider homeschooling weird, it is much more socially acceptable now. And I've heard other veteran homeschool moms say, like, I started homeschooling before it was cool. And yes, it was totally something that was like my kids. I would say, like, don't tell people we're homeschooling. I didn't want them to be judged. I didn't want people to be like, oh, there's the homeschool family, right? So it just was not as socially acceptable yet. Another big change is all the online support. So Facebook had been invented, but I didn't even own a Facebook account. There were not Facebook groups. There was not anything like that. There were email support groups through, maybe you could log on and do Yahoo, but I remember it was an email. But it was really difficult and nothing like it is now for support groups. If there was social media accounts, I didn't know them. They just social media wasn't as big yet. And so finding online support or online programs was really didn't exist, right? And so, or none that I knew of at that time. So even finding, like my son now, he does the Tuttle Twins online. He does their stuff. I know some people do math online, or they have teachers through Zoom. None of that really existed. So everything that you taught them, you either had to know it, experience it, or buy a book about it. So that was something that was very different. With that, with the homeschool online stuff, there just wasn't the options that there are now, right? And I even think about this with um, like a lot of different websites and different things that support you with your homeschool, and finding different curriculums and different things that just didn't exist. It was so limited in what you could choose and your options out there. And so that was really interesting. There were a lot of less options, but at the same times, as of now, there are so many options. I feel like sometimes it can be overwhelming, and so I think that maybe it was nice for me in the beginning to not have it be overwhelming. I did have some doozies, but I also found some really good stuff. But it was nice that it wasn't so overwhelming with options and ideas and styles and all these different things out there, that it was just like, here, option A or B. So that was a little bit nicer. Another thing that was, and it kind of goes along with support, is podcasts didn't really become popular. And I looked it up and said until about 2014. So back in 2008, there weren't really any homeschool podcasts to check out to help you. You just had to go for it. Also, because there were less kids homeschooling, there were less co ops and less things to get together with kids. Now I could find something for my kids every single day, a different co op, a micro school, a hybrid, all of these different options. And back then, we finally found one group that met together for Friday Fun Class. And it was great, but it was a lot harder to find other homeschoolers to meet with. And now there are, and it's interesting because now there are micro schools, hybrid programs, so many different things that have come out because now there's this demand to help homeschoolers that just didn't exist because there was not a demand for it. So it didn't really exist. I did find one time, I don't even know how I found her, this awesome lady. She maybe lived 15, 20 minutes away, and she just wanted to teach Shakespeare, but she wanted a group to do it with. And what play did they do? King Lear, maybe? But they nope, it was Macbeth. And so she taught him all about Shakespeare. She did this whole thing. They did a play and it was completely free. And she did it for her kids. I don't even know how we came about that, but that was like the one thing, the first thing I found that was something like that, that was like, this is amazing. But like that wasn't in 2008. That was when my kids got a little bit older. So once again, no micro schools, hybrid programs at the beginning. So a lot of it was just you and your kids doing your best to figure it out. And there is a beauty to that, right? Because there's not a lot of other people's opinions and thoughts, and or maybe even comparisons of like, she's doing it so much better than I am, I'm a hot mess, when it's just you like, hey, we're just doing our best, we're figuring it out. Don't feel judged by people, anything like that. So there's some beauties to starting before a lot of these advances. And there's some beauty now where you can get a lot more support, easy curriculum choices, a lot of stuff like that. Another thing that I thought was different was no apps or tablets, right? And so I know a lot of people utilize those in their homeschool. I'm not a big screen person. Like I said, my son is utilizing a computer for Tuttle Twins, but I really don't like my kids to be on a computer or a tablet because then I have to manage it, and I guess I get lazy sometimes. But so there wasn't anything like that to use, and I appreciate that because I feel like kids get distracted, and even my son with doing his one program online is like all of a sudden checking sports stats and doing other things, and so I it was there's no way I could have managed that with all seven of them living at home. So it was easier for me to not have anything like that. Let's see. So this is a interesting change too, and maybe it existed back then, and I just didn't know about it. But states didn't really give funding to homeschoolers back then, and now more and more states are saying school choice. Let's do the school choice. This public school system is failing. They just released a statistic not too long ago how literacy is declining, math competency is declining, like all of these things are declining. And instead of just throwing more money in a broken system, they're saying, hey, why don't we take this money and you can do school choice? And so now Utah has a program, the Utah Fits All Scholarship. I talked about it on the podcast over a year or so ago, and you have to apply for it. So you don't just get it and it goes off income. So lowest income gets it first, but you get $8,000 per kid, and you don't get a check, but you get reimbursed. And I'm not in that program, but this was my first year using a program where I got reimbursed for my school stuff, and it was nice. I feel like I have to kind of jump through some hoops, and I wasn't willing to do that when I did learn about these programs into my homeschool journey, but it just felt like too crazy with all the kids. And but it was great. Like it was interesting because when you homeschool on such a tight budget, I was really picky with what I bought because sometimes people are like, well, I got $300 left. What should I get? And so you just go and buy a bunch of stuff. And like we only bought what we really were going to use. And so we were really intentional with books, and we were really intentional with any extra stuff that we bought, just because we were paying for it all. Right. And so it's super nice to have the extra state funds. I know not every state does it, but quite a few states are doing it now, where they're really helping people to take ownership of their children's education. So that's nice. I mean, I could go get into a government thought about that being nice. It's just taxing us, But yeah, so I'll put that a pin in that. Let's see. So those are a few things that I thought of that have changed since homeschooling back in 2008. And it's just like it's always adapting and it's always evolving. But I mean, those are things that are just different from, I mean, you could think of things that are different from then of smartphones, how different smartphones are now, um, different support groups of like Facebook, different people help you on Instagram, whatever, Pinterest, all of these different things. You have people like Karen, who was on the podcast, who has a bazillion printables and all these amazing things that she would do to really just really help supplement your school. And so it's been amazing to see what has been created by more and more people homeschooling, because then you have that free market, right? Where people are like, oh, there's a demand for this now. So I'm going to do some tutoring, or I'm going to offer these things that maybe weren't available when I started. But that you have the opportunity to use now. So now some of the things, like if you want to use anything from state funding, you can use apps, online programs, you can Google different things. You can actually do a lot of things for free for homeschool. You can print off free worksheets. You can Google lots of information for your history, science, nature walks, all those things. So kind of some fun changes that have happened throughout the years. The thing that hasn't changed is that I just love being with my kids, and so grateful that dared to take that plunge and homeschool my babies, because it has been a wild and amazing and adventure. So cannot wait to see what more changes happen to homeschool in hopefully a positive way. And as more and more people realize that they can take ownership of their children's education and really create what it is they want to create. Friends, I hope this was a fun episode for you to see some of the things that would change. If you ever want to an episode like Meg, I have this question. Please make sure you message me, and I would love to put it in the queue for different episodes. So have a great week, and I will talk to you next time.